Revealed, the incredible, touching moment a black maid defended a billionaire left by his lawyer. Mary Johnson knew the luxury high-rise like the back of her hand. Every morning, just as the sun peeked over Chicago's skyline, she would strap on her worn shoes, kiss her 2 children goodbye, and step into the stark contrast of wealth that surrounded her. The gleaming marble floors and the opulent chandeliers made it easy to feel like she was crossing into another world. But Mary carried her strength with her, her heart full of love and unyielding dedication. One day, as she ran her rag over the $1,000,000 countertop, she overheard whispered gossip drifting through the halls like an insidious fog. "Did you hear about Robert Stanton? The billionaire? His own lawyer took him for a ride, left him high and dry." The words dripped with schadenfreude, and Mary felt the pinch in her chest. A vague yet unsettling sadness washed over her for this man, isolated now, vulnerable. With every ounce of humanity she held, she couldn't help but feel for him, even if appearances drew them apart. That evening, after putting her kids to bed, she joined a community meeting where the neighborhood gathered to discuss Robert's downfall. Tension hummed in the air like static electricity, anger spiraling at the thought of a rich man losing everything. Mary could feel the weight of eyes on her, challenging her to stand with the masses. But as she stood up, her heart raced. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. People, Mary began, her voice trembling yet bold. Is this what we want? To judge someone based on what we see with our eyes and ignore the pain they might be feeling inside? Are we so quick to forget that behind the facade of wealth is a human soul? The room fell silent, their anger simmering, faces morphing from resentment to curiosity as her words hit home. In that moment of greatest impact, Mary's truth illuminated the room. She painted a picture of the universe that made them all equal, regardless of bank statements or zip codes. I've cleaned their homes, and let me tell you, they have their struggles, just like we do. Isn't it time we choose empathy over judgment? Her passionate outpouring echoed off the walls, the crowd was wound tight, as fire met ice. Faces shifted, the whispers quieted, and a shift in perspective began to take hold. But as Mary looked into Robert's eyes, she felt the weight of the world bearing down on her shoulders. Could her stand really shift tides? Would her children be safe amidst a storm of prejudices? The distance between their lives seemed to shrink, yet the perception of class loomed larger than ever. As the meeting carried on, the question lingered, would Mary and Robert find a way to stand against judgment together, or would the scrutiny of the world threaten to tear apart what had just begun? Desperation clung in the air, thick with uncertainty, leaving her breathless, both terrified and hopeful as she awaited Robert's response. Just as the silence in the room thickened, Robert Stanton took a deep breath. The palpable tension crackled like a live wire. His shoulders, once rigid with pride, drooped slightly as if the weight of his world pressed heavier upon him. The murmurs faded, and he moved forward, clearing his throat. "Mary," he began, his voice carrying a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "I never expected to hear such kindness in this room tonight." He paused, glancing at the others who surrounded him, their expressions a mix of skepticism and intrigue. "You've reminded us of our humanity, that we all bleed the same, regardless of how much money is in our pockets or how many zeros are on our checks." His eyes glistened, and for a moment, Mary's heart swelled. Was it truly possible that her words could change this man's heart? "I've spent so long in this life of facade, thinking my wealth made me immune to pain. But I was wrong," Robert continued, his voice breaking. "I fell into the trap of believing that isolation equated to success, but here I am, alone." Your voice shattered that illusion. The room, still uncertain, felt the shift. With every word Robert spoke, he undid the chains of judgment that had bound him and drew nearer to the truth Mary had so passionately defended. He cast an eye toward the faces in the crowd. Empathy, that's something priceless, something we all need right now. Mary, you have shown that wealth does not protect us from grief or betrayal. If anything, it makes us more vulnerable. People shifted uneasily. The usual blame directed at the affluent now had a face, an emotional truth spilling from it. Conversations about Robert had delved into anger, leaving no room for understanding. But Mary's passionate plea had opened a door. "Robert," one of the neighbors finally said, her voice shaky but determined. "If this is true, if you're really ready to change, maybe we can find a way to help, a path to heal." More voices joined, and soon the floodgates of discussion opened wider than anyone anticipated. Ideas flowed like water: support groups, community meetings, ways to hold each other accountable. Mary watched, her chest tight, a warmth blossoming as cracks in the armor of disdain fractured. Yet beneath the surface, doubt lingered like a ghost. Would Robert truly embrace this change? How far would their empathy reach, and would it extend beyond this moment? Could it erode the remnants of prejudice that clung tightly to their community? Mary shifted her gaze to Robert, searching for assurance, for commitment. His eyes spoke volumes, filled with a mixture of fear and determination. She sensed his battle, this man torn between the life he knew and the possibility of a new beginning. Mary had spoken words of hope, yet was she ready to lead this path of struggle? Just then, a child's laughter echoed from another room, slicing through the heaviness. It ignited a flicker of joy in Mary's heart. What would her children think of this moment? Would they feel the impact of her decision to step forward? As conversations filled the space, and the night drew on, fate placed them on a precipice. The question loomed larger than ever: could they build a bridge between their worlds, or would the fear of prejudice keep them tethered to their pasts? In that moment of collective uncertainty, Mary felt the pull of possibility. In the shadows of doubt, she clung to the light of hope that sometimes, just sometimes, the most unlikely friendships could blossom. But as they discussed futures and partnerships, a sudden commotion interrupted them. A loud knock at the door rattled the room, sending a ripple of fear through the crowd. Who could it be? What more challenges awaited them? The knock echoed again, louder this time. It reverberated through the room like a thunderclap, breaking the fragile tension that had gathered like a storm overhead. Everyone turned their heads toward the door, hearts pounding in unison. Mary felt an involuntary chill race down her spine. Who was standing on the other side, ready to shatter the moment they had just begun to build? Should someone get that? Someone whispered, as if saying it aloud would somehow summon the answers they were all seeking. Robert took a cautious step toward the door, his expression a mixture of curiosity and dread. "I'll see who it is," he offered, his voice barely louder than a whisper. Hesitation gripped the air. This man had just shared his vulnerabilities, and now he was moving toward the unknown. Was he truly ready for whatever lay beyond? As Robert reached for the doorknob, a murmured prayer rose amongst the crowd. Mary caught the eye of a neighbor and gave a reassuring nod. "Whatever it is, we're in this together," she said softly, trying to ward off the collective anxiety suffocating the room. With a deep breath, Robert swung the door open. The sight before him caught them all off guard. A young woman, no older than 20, stood there, rain-soaked and visibly shaken. She clutched a small suitcase close to her body, the fabric of her clothes clinging to her like a second skin. Her wide eyes darted around the room, taking in the faces of people she didn't recognize. "Can I help you?" Robert asked, the panic without losing the warmth in his voice. He stepped half a foot into the doorway, silhouetted against the dim light of the room behind him. "Is this the Stanton residence?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper over the pounding rain outside. The vulnerability in her tone tugged at Mary's heartstrings, but tension flooded back in as they all held their breath, waiting for Robert's response. Yes, it is, Robert replied, his brow furrowing. Are you all right? I need a job, the young woman stammered, the words rushing from her mouth like a dam bursting. I've been on my own since she paused, struggling to piece together her story, since everything changed back home. I need help. The crowd watched in silence, waiting for Robert's response. A sense of recognition washed over him, as if the weight of shared struggles connected them to this stranger. But would the ghosts of his privilege allow him to respond with compassion? Mary saw a moment of decision unfolding before them. Would he give this young woman the empathy she desperately needed? Would he truly transform into the man he had promised he could be? You're welcome here, he said finally, his words steady. Come inside. As the young woman stepped over the threshold, hope flickered in the room, mixing with newfound responsibilities. The group erupted in hushed murmurs. No one saw this coming, the walls of their expectations were crumbling. But just as hope began to rise anew, another knock jolted through the room. Could it be another plea, another soul at their doorstep? Who else was on the fringes, waiting for a chance to be heard? The tension thickened once more. And in that silence, Mary's breath caught in her throat. What more awaited them on this unexpected journey? The rain continued its relentless patter against the windows, but inside, an electric atmosphere replaced the storm outside. Everyone shifted in anticipation, eyes glued to the door. Robert opened his mouth, perhaps intending to reassure the crowd or guide the conversation, but then a sudden silence fell over the room. The young woman, still shaking, stood just inside the threshold, clutching her suitcase like a lifeline. What next? Someone whispered, breaking the trance. Mary felt a mix of excitement and dread. This was just the beginning, but what else lay ahead? Another knock sounded, sharper this time, and the group jolted. I'll get it, someone called, stepping forward. Annie, a well-meaning neighbor, bravely approached, but Robert held up his hand, halting her. The tension pulsed around them, the promise of the unknown looming large. Let us see who it is, Robert decided, steeling himself once more. With a hint of trepidation, he turned the doorknob and pulled the door open, revealing an elderly man soaked to the bone. His face a patchwork of wrinkles and worry was strikingly familiar. Mr. Sanders? Robert gasped, recognition flaring in his eyes. He couldn't believe the man who once built the community now stood before him, weathered and worn, looking as though the world had cursed him. I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Sanders stammered, his voice trembling. But I heard about what happened. I've lost everything too, and he glanced at the strangers gathered behind Robert. I need a place to stay for just a night. The room erupted into whispers, confusion mixing with disbelief. Mary felt her heart racing. How could this be happening? They were opening their doors to a young woman seeking hope, but now they were also facing a man who had once held power over their lives. It was surreal. But how? What happened? Robert asked, taking a cautious step toward the old man. Just a few weeks back, you were everything can change in a blink, Mr. Sanders said bitterly, looking down as if the weight of his own past resided there. I lost my job. My home. Now I'm just lost. As Robert processed this, Mary stepped forward, realizing they were all swept up in a far greater story than they'd anticipated. She looked at the young woman beside her and then back at Mr. Sanders. They were all just victims of circumstances, the young and the old, the privileged and the struggling. Come in, Mary urged, her voice filled with empathy. We have room here. You're welcome with us. The elderly man's eyes filled with tears at her kindness, while the young woman shifted uneasily at the sight of the familiar but faded figure before her. Their shared humanity felt overwhelming in that instant, weaving connections that transcended their circumstances. But just as they began to process this surreal twist of fate, the storm outside intensified, rattling the windows and growing ever closer. The atmosphere shifted again, now tinged with uncertainty. Would this be enough? What happens when the rain stops? The young woman whispered, as if questioning not just the weather, but the reality they were all facing. In that moment, amid their shared vulnerability, the next knock sounded a reminder that the outside world was not done with them yet. Mary's heart raced again. Who could possibly be left to confront them tonight? And what truths would they bring with them? The knock echoed through the room, resonating like a heartbeat quickening in the anxiety-laden silence. Everyone crowded by the entrance, exchanging anxious glances. Mary's stomach twisted. Would this next arrival bring more chaos, or perhaps lend clarity to their muddled emotions? Robert flinched but stepped aside decisively. "Stay back, everyone," he instructed, probably more for himself than for the group. He opened the door slowly, revealing another figure silhouetted against the storm this time. It was a middle-aged woman, drenched and shaking, holding onto an umbrella battling against the wind. "Can I come in?" she managed to ask between chattering teeth, her voice barely audible above the rain's relentless angry drum. I heard voices and I thought there was a desperate chord in her voice that tugged at Mary's heart. "Of course," Robert said immediately, beckoning her inside. As she stepped over the threshold, the warmth of the room enveloped her, the shock of cold replaced by a burst of compassion from the group. "Thank you," she said, looking around at the assembled strangers, her eyes revealing a mixture of fear and hope. "I didn't know where else to go. I lost my home too." Her gaze darted from Mr. Sanders to the young woman and back again, seeking a thread of understanding in their eyes. The young woman, still clutching her suitcase, softened at the woman's desperation. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice steadier than before. "Carla," the newcomer replied, brushing rain-soaked hair from her forehead. "I used to clean office buildings downtown, a maid, so to speak. But they shut down after the storm. That was my last job. I'm just lost." Mary's heart ached as she listened. It seemed that, one by one, the storm was tearing apart lives, leaving behind only remnants of who they once were. Two strangers now, like Mr. Sanders, seeking a place where they could feel something familiar, something safe. Just as Mary was about to speak, the sound of thunder rumbled ominously overhead, as if even the sky shared their fears. The group huddled closer together. The warmth of connection pushed against the cold grip of uncertainty. "What if this goes on for days?" Annie piped up, her voice trembling as much as her hands. What if we can't go back to our homes?" "Then we make this our home at least for now," whispered Mary, surprising herself with the confidence that tinged her words. But doubt laced the edges of their resolve. The air crackled with unspoken fears. They were all navigating unfamiliar waters, grappling with the ache of knowing their lives would never be the same. "I refuse to be defined by this," Mr. Sanders declared, his voice rising slightly. "We may have lost our homes, but we haven't lost our spirit." There was agreement in the room, a collective strength fracturing through the fear as they looked at one another, each one realizing they were not alone in their struggles. Then, just as the mood began feeling hopeful, another sharp knock shattered their brief moment of camaraderie. The tension escalated again. What more could the night possibly hold? Everyone turned towards the door, the collective breath held in suspense. Who could it be now? Mary asked, panic threading through her voice. The question lingered in the room, charged with the promise of answers or further complications. Would they find salvation or face deeper challenges? She grasped the young woman's arm, squeezing gently an unspoken vow that whatever awaited them, they would face it together. The door swung open abruptly, nearly slamming against the wall. Standing there was a young man, his clothes sopping wet and his eyes wide with panic. He was gasping for air, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Please. Help me," he stammered, his voice breaking through the noise of the storm. Mary felt her heart leap into her throat. Anxiety surged back through the group, churning in their stomachs. This was far too much for one night. "What happened?" Robert asked, his calm demeanor cracking under pressure. "They're after me." The young man cried, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I don't know what to do. I heard gunshots. Annie exclaimed, gripping her suitcase tightly. What did you do? Just run. I didn't mean to get involved. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. His panic was palpable, causing the whole room to tremble with unease. Mary exchanged a worried glance with Carla, who had stepped back, trying to distance herself. Everyone seemed to shrink inward as the weight of the man's words settled over them. Why would someone chase you? Mr. Sanders demanded, his rugged voice suddenly sharp and firm. Because I saw something I shouldn't have, the young man said, trembling uncontrollably. Something dangerous. I was at the old pier, and I thought it was just a gathering. But then. Then what? Mary urged, desperate for clarity. He swallowed hard and glanced at the door as though suffocated by the weight of what he carried. I saw a deal go wrong. There were men yelling, and they pulled out guns. They were ready to shoot. The storm raged outside, and each clap of thunder felt like the heavy heartbeat of the night. Mary's mind raced. This was the last thing they needed, danger lurking in the shadows as they tried to navigate their own spiraling lives. But what do we do now? Carla whispered, fear creeping back into her features. Hide, the young man replied hoarsely, nodding toward the back of the cramped space. They could follow me here. We need to find a place to stay low and pray they don't find us. Mary felt a sense of urgency pounding in her chest. They were all struggling to hold on to scraps of safety, and this moment threatened to unravel what little hope they had clung to. Can we trust him? She asked the room, her voice low, her eyes darting between the group. Mr. Sanders' eyes narrowed in skepticism. It doesn't matter if we trust him. He needs our help, and honestly, we need his story to help ourselves. There's no escaping this storm without a bit of risk. The collective tension felt nearly electric. Suddenly, they were no longer just a group of lost souls now, they were entangled in something bigger than themselves. All right, let us do it, Robert said finally. We'll help him, but we have to stay together. As they huddled closer, forming a makeshift circle of solidarity, a reassuring warmth kindled among the uncertainty. They were all traversing an unknown path together now, each with their personal burdens weighing down their spirits, but united by the promise of mutual protection. Just then, a different sound broke the rhythm of raindrops, the sound of heavy footsteps approaching their door. Mary held her breath, fear crashing over her like the relentless waves outside. Would they ally with their new companion, or would this night take another terrifying turn? What awaited them just beyond that thin barrier of wood? The footsteps grew louder, more deliberate. Mary's heart raced, each thunderclap amplifying her fear. The group instinctively pressed closer together, forming a barrier against whatever was about to come through that door. Stay quiet, Robert whispered, his voice barely above a breath. Everyone nodded, a silent pact of survival hanging heavily in the air. As the footsteps stopped, they could hear a deep voice murmur just outside. He went this way. I can smell the rat, the voice grumbled, gritty and urgent. Mary's stomach dropped. She exchanged frantic glances with Annie and Carla, who had gone pale. The young man looked like he might bolt. Don't, Mary warned, gripping his arm tightly. You'll make it worse. A moment passed, stretching into an eternity, when suddenly, the door rattled. The heavy door shuddered as a boot collided with it, testing its strength. Get down! Mr. Sanders shouted, shoving the young man behind him. They all ducked, hearts pounding in their chests like a drummer's frantic beat. With a final shove, the door burst open, spilling cold wind and rain into the cramped room. A shadowy figure stood in the frame, silhouetted against the flash of lightning. What are you doing in there? The figure growled, stepping inside as the wind howled behind him. Run! Mary screamed, adrenaline surging through her veins. In a flurry of movement, everyone scrambled. Annie dove for the back room, while Robert ushered Carla and Mr. Sanders toward the kitchen. The young man hesitated, torn between fight and flight, uncertainty flashing across his eyes. "No. Come with us," Mary urged, her voice a mix of fear and determination. She clutched the young man's arm and pulled him forward, following the others into the cramped space of the kitchen. But just as they settled behind the counter, hoping to remain invisible, the figure advanced, illuminated now by the flickering light of a nearby lantern. "Out of the way!" he bellowed, brandishing a flashlight. The beam swept across the room, illuminating their faces one by one, revealing panic etched in every expression. Mary could see the glint in his eyes as they locked onto hers. It was someone she recognized, though not well. Tommy, the raucous man from the bar across town, known for his tough demeanor but not for violence. "What's happening?" he demanded, lowering the flashlight slightly. "You kids don't even know what you're messing with." "Tommy," Mary pleaded, her heart pounding. "You have to help us. Someone is chasing this guy." The tension in Tommy's face softened just slightly as he registered the fear in Mary's eyes. "Chasing him? Why?" "He saw something," she explained quickly, trying to put the pieces together in a way that would hold his attention. "Something illegal down at the pier. And they're coming for him, for all of us." Tommy ran a hand through his drenched hair, clearly weighing his options. The storm outside seemed to pick up, thunder crashing angrily as if reflecting the chaos inside. "Fine," he grumbled, eyeing the door warily. "But we need a plan, and we need to be quiet. Those men are ruthless." As they huddled around Tommy, desperate for guidance, Mary realized they were now at the mercy of a stranger. Their closeness felt even more fragile now, and she wondered if surviving the night meant discovering a part of themselves they had hidden deep inside. Could they really trust Tommy? A sudden fear gripped her. What if their only way out was in cooperation with someone who could just as easily betray them? But before she could voice her concern, the outside door slammed again, and the air grew thick with anxiety, as if the storm itself was keeping a secret. "Get ready," Tommy said firmly, his voice steadying. "We've got to move now." What was waiting out there in the dark? Would they escape together, or was this just the beginning of a much darker journey? Mary's breath hitched as she shifted behind the kitchen counter, her mind racing. The moment Tommy said they needed to move, a cold fear wrapped around her heart like a vice. What were they walking into? "Where do we go?" Robert asked, his voice strained. He looked between Tommy and Mary, searching for answers. Tommy stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We'll head out the back. There's an old service door that leads to the alley. If we can make it there without being spotted, we stand a chance." "Right, the alley," Mary echoed, remembering where she had seen it before. It felt so far away. The thought of being caught out in the rain flashed through her mind, mixing with the fear of those men outside. "Stay low and stay quiet," Tommy instructed, glancing at the door again. The wind howled as if to warn them, a relentless reminder of their precarious situation. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from outside, causing everyone to stiffen. Mary could feel the heat radiating from the young man beside her. He was trembling, and it broke her heart. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, more to convince herself than him. "On three," Tommy said, his voice cutting through the tension. 1, 2, 3. They moved as one, bolting from behind the counter. Tommy took the lead, his flashlight sweeping through the darkness, revealing the clutter of the kitchen, a forgotten world against the storm outside. Each movement felt like they were inching closer to the jaws of danger. As they darted through the kitchen, Mary's mind was consumed with the chaotic thoughts of escaping. Was this really happening? The rain pooled around their feet as they soaked through the back door, throwing caution to the wind. It felt bitter cold against her skin. "Keep going," Tommy urged, but just as hope flickered in her chest, the sound of shouting rang out in the night, intensifying the urgency. "They're coming!" Carla's voice squeaked, panic surging through her. The group's adrenaline pumped faster, propelling them toward the alley like a tightly coiled spring about to release. Mary peeked back toward the kitchen as they reached the door leading to the alley. Time stretched, and for a moment, the world around her hazed. All she could think about was escaping, about not letting anyone get left behind in this storm, this nightmare. "Go!" Tommy barked, and they surged forward, spilling into the alley, the rain hitting them like sharp needles. The noise from behind them grew louder. They could hear their pursuers shouting, anger driving their words. The alley was narrow, like a throat squeezing them tight. "This way!" Tommy shouted, slipping around a corner. They followed, urgency in every step, dodging trash cans and puddles that threatened to trip them up. Mary's heart raced not just from fear, but from concern for the person they were running to protect. Was he even worth risking everything for? "We can't stop," Robert called out, gripping Annie's arm as she stumbled slightly, trying to catch her breath. "Just a little farther," Tommy encouraged, anxiety creeping into his voice. The group pressed on, hoping to find a way out. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed back down the alley, causing them all to jump. Mary turned, eyes wide with dread. They were getting closer. "What are we going to do?" Annie gasped, fear bubbling under her voice. "I don't know," Tommy admitted, panting. The grim reality settled around them like fog, thick and suffocating. Mary's mind raced. They could either fight to protect the young man, or they could run farther into the city, where they might find a way to hide. But could they really just leave everything behind? As they reached a dead end, the sound of footsteps grew nearer, their breaths coming in quick bursts. This was it. A choice lay before her in that moment, to surrender to the dark chase or fight back against their fear. "Up! We need to climb!" Tommy shouted suddenly, his eyes darting around for a way out. With lightning flashing overhead, illuminating brief glimpses of desperation, Mary realized she had to make a decision. "Now!" she urged, her voice rising above the chaos. What would she choose? But as she looked at the wall before them, she couldn't help but wonder, did they have the strength to take a leap of faith, or was their escape just as precarious as the storm brewing above? The path ahead remained a mystery, and the shadows wishing to swallow them grew ever closer. Mary's heart raced as Tommy began to scale the wall in front of them. He grasped at a fire escape ladder that jutted out above, rusted and slippery from the rain. She could see the urgency in his movements. He was determined not to let fear win. "Come on. We can do this." His voice rang through the rain, mingling with the chaos behind them. Annie was the first to follow suit, clambering up beside him with Robert right behind her. The three of them quickly moved up the ladder, seeking the safety of the rooftop. Mary watched in fear and admiration as they pushed themselves higher, adrenaline driving them forward. "Go! I'll help Carla," she yelled over her shoulder, her feet already moving toward her friend. Carla was frozen, her face pale against the shadows of the alley. "I can't. I can't," she gasped, trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. Mary grabbed her hand, squeezing it tight. "You can. Trust me. We have to climb, or they'll catch us." With a nod, fear still evident in her eyes, Carla attempted to step onto the ladder. Mary could feel her own heart pounding as she glanced back. The shouting was closer now, they didn't have much time. Mary pulled Carla to the base of the ladder, on three, just like Tommy, "Okay? We're in this together." Carla took a deep breath, her chest heaving. "Okay. 1, 2, 3. They scrambled up, their hands slipping slightly on the metal in the downpour. Each rung felt like it was covered in ice, each second stretching long and heavy. The rain fell hard, turning the alley below into a slick, dark pit, a feasting ground for their pursuers. As they reached the top, Mary felt relief wash over her, only to be sharply replaced by dread as she looked around. The rooftop was small, surrounded by tall buildings with no clear exit. "Where do we go now?" Carla's voice wavered, panic threatening to take hold. "Maybe we can get to the other side?" Mary suggested, trying to project calm that she didn't feel. She scanned their surroundings, searching for any sign of safety. Tommy's head suddenly appeared from over the edge. "We need to hold on. They're right behind us." Just as Mary took a step forward, another crash echoed from below, this one louder, more violent. "No!" she gasped, grabbing Carla's arm as the sound ricocheted off the walls. A figure emerged into the alley, illuminated by a flash of lightning. "Let us go!" Tommy shouted, breaking the stillness in the air. They needed to move, and fast. With a plan forming in her mind, Mary pointed toward the roof ledge above them. "If we can get to that skylight, we might find a way down inside." Without waiting for approval, she darted toward the edge, adrenaline pushing her feet faster than fear could pull them back. She leaped, grasping at the roof's edge and swinging her legs up to roll onto a flat surface. "It's clear, come on!" she yelled back, her voice fierce with determination. One by one, Carla and Tommy followed, and soon they were all huddled by the skylight. The dark void below beckoned to them a promise of escape if they could just get down. As the thunder rumbled overhead, intensifying the moment, Mary braced herself. "We can't hesitate." Each breathed in unison, their hearts pounding like drums. But just as Tommy prepared to make the first move, a heavy crash echoed again, this time accompanied by shouting voices. "They're coming for us." Mary's mind raced. They could either risk the jump or face whatever was waiting behind them. "We can't go back now," she whispered, looking into the eyes of her friends. "We have to take this leap together." "What if?" Robert began hesitantly, but Mary shook her head. They couldn't afford to doubt now. The choice was live or die, and the storm outside felt like it was challenging them. Mary clenched her fists, heart firm. "On 3, we jump. Together. 1, 2, 3. And in that fleeting moment, as they leapt through the glass, she couldn't help but wonder what awaited them below. Would it be freedom or a new kind of danger? The shattering glass scattered like stars around them and the world seemed to hold its breath as they fell. Mary's heart raced, not just from the adrenaline of the leap, but from anticipation mixed with sheer terror. What awaited them below? Would they land in safety or face another storm? They fell into a dimly lit storeroom, a musty smell greeting them as they hit the ground in a tangle of limbs. The sudden silence felt surreal after the chaos of the chase. Gasping for air, they scrambled to get to their feet, clumsily checking one another for injuries. "Is everyone okay?" Mary panted, scanning their faces under the dim light filtering through grimy windows. It was a moment of collective relief before the reality of their situation settled back over them like a heavy blanket. "Yeah, I think so," Carla replied, still shaking but slowly aligning herself with their new surroundings. Tommy moved to the door, peeking out cautiously. "Let us hope we're not trapped," he murmured, guilt and determination dancing across his face. "Stay low," Robert emphasized, unusually serious. They were still fugitives, and danger lingered in the air like an unwelcome specter. Mary wasn't sure how much more of this she could take. Her heart raced with every echoing footstep outside, her senses were sharp. Straining to hear anything that could give them a clue about their next move, she felt the need to rally them. "We made it this far. We can't stop now," she declared, pulling back the curtains of doubt. Just then, the sound of shuffling feet grew closer, sending icy fingers of fear skittering down her spine. "We have to find another way out quick," she urged. As they crept toward the back of the storeroom, Mary felt an urge to protect this ragtag group. They were no longer just strangers, they had become a family forged in the fires of adversity. Their shared vulnerabilities had illuminated a warmth she never expected within her heart. "You're right," Tommy said, voice steadier, "but let us be smart about this." Whispers filled the air as they plotted their escape. "There's got to be a fire exit somewhere in here," suggested Annie, her brows furrowed in determination. "Follow me," Robert led the way, inching cautiously toward a door marked with an old, faded exit sign. Hope fluttered in Mary's heart as they took their time moving forward. Suddenly, the door burst open. A guard stood silhouetted in the light, a figure of authority they desperately tried to avoid. "What are you kids doing here?" he barked. The tension in the air became palpable, and Mary felt her heart plummet. But before they could react, Tommy stepped forward, eyes fierce with resolve. "We're just looking for a way out. We got lost during the storm." His voice was sincere, and for a moment, Mary believed, too. "You better leave now before this gets ugly," the guard warned, glancing back as if expecting company at any moment. "Thank you, we will," Mary blurted, gripping Carla's hand tightly, and together, they rushed through the doorway before he could change his mind. Emerging onto the street, they found themselves drenched but free. The storm raged still, but they took a moment to breathe, eyes adjusting to the drenching rain and how it mirrored their rebirth. There was something cathartic about it, as if nature was washing away their fears. "We did it!" Carla shouted, a booming expression of joy cutting through the chaos. Her smile lit up the night, igniting a spark of hope among them all. "Now what?" Robert looked around knowingly they were still in the thick of it. It was a moment of realization that safety was fleeting. "We need to stay together," Mary insisted, her voice steady like a beacon in the storm. "We have to find a place to secure ourselves." The sound of sirens grew closer, urgency snapping them from their euphoria. "Let us head for the community center," Tommy suggested, pointing down the alley that led to safety, the community they had all fought to protect. "They can help." They began running, hearts pounding as they weaved through the rain-slicked streets. Every stride felt triumphant, each step pulling them closer to a sense of belonging. They arrived at the community center, breathless but united. Once inside, they were greeted with hugs and surprised faces. The warm lights shone like the sun breaking through clouds after a storm. Each of their stories poured out, weaving a tapestry of struggle and resilience, connecting them like threads. In that moment, Mary caught Robert's eye across the room. Their mutual understanding sealed a promise. Together they would build empathy community that thrived beyond the fear of class or status. They helped each other, helping lift lives above the fray of chaos. And so, in the vibrant heart of that community center, with laughter replacing fear, they cultivated a space where all were welcome, a reminder that even amidst relentless storms, hope could blossom. "Remember this night," Mary said, looking at her friends. "It's not just about survival, it's about the lives we touch. Let us be the change we need in our world." As they rallied together, it was clear this would not be the end of their journey, but the beginning of something beautiful. If you felt inspired by this incredible story, you need to subscribe now to the channel. Don't wait not even one more second to share this transformation with at least 5 friends who need to see how hope can shimmer even in the most turbulent storms. Leave a like now to feed that algorithm and help us reach even more souls with these uplifting stories. Comment below with your reactions, your feelings about this powerful ending, and what it means to you. This is the moment to show your support and keep this community thriving. Join us, we're in this together.